The barking would not stop, and that was what first told Ivan Jennings that something was terribly wrong. He had been mending the split-rail fence along the eastern pasture when Rex, his faithful shepherd mix, had started up with a sound Ivan had never heard from him before. Not the alert bark that meant deer in the corn, not the warning bark that meant strangers on the road, but something urgent and almost frantic. The dog stood at the edge of the irrigation ditch that ran along the back 40, his whole body rigid, hackles raised, barking down into the channel with an intensity that made Ivan drop his tools and run. The autumn afternoon was warm despite the season, the kind of day that made a man grateful for the work of his hands and the land he had earned through 10 years of military service on the northern frontier. Ivan had seen his share of horrors in those years, fighting in skirmishes against orc raiding parties that came down from the mountain territories to pillage human settlements. He had lost friends to those raids, seen villages burned, watched good men die screaming. When his service ended, he had taken his land grant as far from the frontier as he could manage, and spent 5 years building something peaceful, a modest farmhouse, fields of wheat and corn, a small orchard, and a life blessedly free from violence. But Rex was still barking, and when Ivan reached the edge of the ditch, his heart lurched in his chest. At the bottom of the channel, sprawled on her back among the rocks and shallow water, was an orc. For a moment, every instinct screamed at him to reach for a weapon he no longer carried. His hand actually moved toward his hip where his sword had once hung. But then his eyes registered details that cut through the combat reflex like a knife through cloth. This was no raider. The figure below was female, young, and very clearly hurt. Her green skin was torn and bloodied across her shoulder and ribs. Her dark hair was matted with mud and what looked like dried blood. She wore leather clothing that had once been well made but was now shredded in places, and one of her legs bent at an angle that made Ivan's stomach turn. She was not moving. Rex whined, looking up at Ivan as if to say, "Well, are you going to do something?" Ivan stood frozen for what felt like an eternity but was probably only seconds. Every piece of training, every lesson from the war told him to walk away. Orcs were the enemy. They had killed his friends, destroyed human settlements, shown no mercy to the innocent. The smart thing, the safe thing, would be to ride into the nearest town and report this. Let someone else deal with it. Let the authorities decide what to do with a wounded orc on human land. But even as those thoughts moved through his mind, he was already scrambling down the side of the ditch, sending loose dirt and pebbles cascading ahead of him. Because beneath the green skin and the small tusks that protruded slightly from her lower jaw, beneath the pointed ears and the powerful build that marked her as one of the mountain clans, Ivan saw something that cut through all his training and all his caution. He saw a person who was dying. The water at the bottom was cold and only a few inches deep, fed by the creek that ran through his property. Ivan splashed through it and dropped to his knees beside the orc woman, his hands hovering over her uncertainly. Up close, she looked even worse. The wound on her shoulder was deep, a ragged tear that might have come from a blade or possibly an animal attack. Her breathing was shallow and rattling. When he pressed his fingers to her throat, searching for a pulse, her skin was cold to the touch, but he felt it a heartbeat, thready and weak but there. She was alive, but she would not be for much longer if she stayed down here. Ivan looked up at the steep sides of the ditch, then back at the woman. She was tall, probably close to 6 feet, and her build was solid muscle. Getting her up that slope was going to be nearly impossible alone, but leaving her here while he fetched help was not an option either. By the time he came back, she would be dead. "Well, girl," he muttered to himself, sliding his arms beneath her shoulders and knees. "Let us see if all those years of hauling grain sacks have been worth something." She was heavy, heavier than he expected, but Ivan had always been strong. He had to be, working the land by himself. He lifted her as carefully as he could, trying not to jostle the broken leg, and began the slow, agonizing climb up the side of the ditch. Rex barked encouragement from above, dancing at the edge. Twice Ivan's boots slipped in the loose soil and he nearly went down. His shoulders screamed in protest. His back felt like it was being torn in two. But he kept climbing, one foot after another, until finally he was at the top and laying the orc woman on the grass. She still had not opened her eyes. Her face was slack, unconscious, and seeing her in the full light of day, Ivan realized she was probably younger than he had first thought. Early 20s at most, maybe even younger. Just a girl, really, despite her size. What in all the hells was an orc doing this far south? And how had she ended up broken and bleeding in his irrigation ditch? Questions for later. Right now, she needed a doctor, but bringing a doctor out here to treat an orc was likely to cause more problems than it solved. The nearest town, Millfield, was not overtly hostile to orcs the way some settlements were, but there was no love lost either. Too many people had lost family members in the raids. Too many remembered the burnings and the violence. If Ivan brought this girl into town, there was a real chance someone would finish what her injuries had started, which left only one option. "Home," he said to Rex, who immediately started trotting toward the farmhouse. "Good boy." Ivan gathered the orc woman into his arms again, cradling her against his chest, and began the long walk back across the fields. She was limp in his grip, her head lolling against his shoulder. Blood from her wounds soaked into his shirt. By the time he reached the house, his arms were shaking from the effort of carrying her, but he did not stop until he had kicked open the door and carried her inside. His home was simple, one large room that served as kitchen and living space, a bedroom in the back, a small root cellar beneath a trapdoor. He had built it himself with lumber from his own trees and stone from his own fields, and he took pride in keeping it clean and orderly. Now he was tracking mud and blood across the floor as he carried the orc woman to his bed and laid her down on the quilt his mother had sewn before she died. For a moment, looking at the green-skinned stranger lying unconscious on his bed, Ivan felt the sheer absurdity of the situation crash over him. What was he doing? This was madness. He should have left her in the ditch. He should have reported it and let someone else handle the problem. Instead, he had brought an orc, a member of the species he had spent a decade learning to kill, into his home, into his bed, and was now preparing to save her life. His hands moved anyway, following training from a different kind. During the war, field medics had been in short supply, and every soldier learned basic wound treatment. Ivan stripped away the ruined leather vest the woman wore, exposing the gash across her shoulder and the deep bruising along her ribs. He fetched water from the pump, clean cloth from his linen chest, and the bottle of strong whiskey he kept for rare evenings when memories of the war made sleep impossible. The shoulder wound needed stitching, but first it needed cleaning. He poured whiskey over it, and the orc woman gasped, her eyes flying open. They were amber, bright and wild with pain and confusion. She tried to sit up to pull away, but Ivan pressed a hand to her uninjured shoulder. "Easy," he said, keeping his voice calm and level. "You are hurt." "I am trying to help." She stared at him, and he stared back. This close, he could see the fine details of her face, the way her tusks were small and neatly shaped, barely protruding past her upper lip. The strong line of her jaw, the scar that ran through one dark eyebrow. Her amber eyes were glazed with pain and shock, but there was intelligence in them and fear. "Human," she rasped, and her voice was rough as if she had been screaming. "Yes," Ivan said. "And you are on my land. How did you end up in my ditch?" She tried to answer, but the effort seemed to cost her. Her eyes rolled back and she slumped into unconsciousness again. Ivan caught her before her head hit the wooden bed frame, easing her back down. "Right then," he said to the empty room. "Talk later. Fix first." He worked through the afternoon and into the evening, stitching the shoulder wound with the same thread he used to mend his clothes, setting the broken leg as best he could with splints made from kindling wood and strips of cloth. The leg was bad compound fracture, bone visible through the skin, and he was honestly not sure she would keep it. Infection was the real danger now. He cleaned every wound with whiskey, packed them with poultices made from herbs his mother had taught him about, and wrapped everything in clean bandages. By the time he finished, night had fallen and he was exhausted. The orc woman lay pale and still on his bed, her breathing more regular now but still weak. Ivan dragged a chair from the kitchen table and positioned it beside the bed, settling in to keep watch. Rex curled up at his feet, occasionally lifting his head to sniff in the direction of their unexpected guest. Ivan did not sleep. He watched the rise and fall of her chest, monitored her breathing, checked her forehead for signs of fever. And he thought about the choice he had made, the line he had crossed. If anyone found out he was harboring an orc, his life here would be over. At best, they would drive him out. At worst, they would hang him as a traitor to his own kind. But when he looked at her, this young woman who had been broken and bleeding and alone, he could not bring himself to regret it. Somewhere around midnight, her eyes opened again. This time they were clearer, more focused. She looked at him, then at the bandages on her shoulder, the splint on her leg. Her expression was unreadable. "Why?" she asked. It was a simple question with a complicated answer. Ivan leaned back in his chair, considering. "My dog was barking," he said finally. "I came to see why, found you at the bottom of the ditch. You were dying. So you brought me here." She said it flatly, a statement rather than a question. A human brought me, an orc, into his home. Seemed like the thing to do at the time. She studied him for a long moment, those amber eyes searching his face for something. "You are either very stupid or very kind. I have not decided which." "Can be both," Ivan said with a slight smile. "What is your name?" She hesitated, then said, "Kara." "Ivan Jennings. This is my farm. That is Rex." He gestured to the dog, who thumped his tail once but did not approach. "How did you end up in my ditch, Kara?" Her jaw tightened. "I fell." "Fell from where? Does it matter? If there are more injuries I need to know about, yes." She closed her eyes, and for a moment he thought she had passed out again. But then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was running. For 3 days. There were pursuers. I climbed the rocks above your ditch, trying to see if they were still following. The stone gave way. I fell." "Pursuers," Ivan repeated. "Human or orc?" "Orc," she said, and there was a bitterness in her voice that surprised him. "My own clan." "Why would your own people hunt you?" She opened her eyes and looked at him, and in that gaze he saw a depth of pain that had nothing to do with her physical injuries. "Because I did something unforgivable in their eyes. I showed mercy to humans." Ivan felt something shift in his chest, a recognition of something shared. "Tell me." And slowly, haltingly, she did. The story came in pieces, as if each word cost her. Kara had been a scout for the Mountain Ash clan, one of the largest orc tribes in the Northern Territories. 3 weeks ago, her patrol had come across a human farmstead, a young couple with 2 small children. Standard practice would have been to raid it, take what they could carry, burn the rest. But when Kara looked at those children, something in her had rebelled. She had convinced her patrol leader to leave the family alone. Told him the farmstead was too poor to bother with, that they should move on to richer targets. It had worked, and the family had been spared. But another member of the patrol had reported her to the clan chief. She was called before the council, accused of being weak, of caring for humans more than her own people. They called her tainted, corrupted, traitor. The sentence had been death, but Kara had escaped before they could carry it out. She had been running ever since, heading south into human lands because anywhere in Orc territory she would be hunted. Better to take her chances with humans who might kill her quickly than return to her clan, who would make her death slow and shameful. So I ran, she finished, her voice rough. And I fell. And now I am here in the home of a human who should hate me, being cared for by a man who has every reason to let me die. She looked at him. Why did you not? Let me die, I mean. You fought in the border wars, yes. I can see it in the way you carry yourself. You know what my people have done to yours. Ivan was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, yes, I fought, lost friends, saw things I wish I could forget. For a long time I hated orcs, all of them without exception. He met her eyes. But that was a long time ago. And when I saw you in that ditch, all I saw was someone who needed help. Maybe I am stupid. Maybe I just got tired of hating, he shrugged. Does it matter? Yes, Kara said softly. It matters very much. She fell asleep after that, a real sleep rather than unconsciousness, and Ivan finally allowed himself to doze. When dawn light filtered through the windows, he woke to find her watching him, her amber eyes thoughtful. You are going to have a great deal of trouble because of me, she said. Probably, Ivan agreed. I should leave, as soon as I can walk. You cannot walk. Your leg is broken. It will be weeks before you can put weight on it if you are lucky. Then I should leave anyway, crawl if I must, and die a mile down the road. No. Ivan stood, stretching out the kinks in his back. You will stay here until you heal. Then you can decide what you want to do. Why would you risk so much for me? Ivan looked at her, this fierce young woman who had given up everything to save a human family she did not know. Because you already risked everything for people you did not know. Seems only fair someone returns the favor. For the first time since he had found her, Kara smiled. It was a small, fragile thing, but it transformed her face. You are very strange, Ivan Jennings. Been told that before, he said, and went to start breakfast. The days that followed fell into a careful routine. Ivan brought Kara food and water, changed her bandages, helped her manage the necessities of being bedridden. She was a difficult patient at first, proud and resistant to accepting help, but gradually she began to allow it. The wounds were healing cleanly, which was better than Ivan had dared hope. The broken leg would take longer, but there were no signs of infection, and she had regained some color in her green skin. During the long hours when she was awake, they talked. At first, the conversations were careful, both of them testing boundaries, but slowly they opened up. Kara told him about growing up in the Mountain Ash clan, about the harsh beauty of the northern peaks, about the rigid honor codes that governed every aspect of Orc society. She spoke of her training as a scout, of learning to track and hunt and survive in the wilderness. She had 2 younger brothers she would probably never see again. Her mother had died in childbirth when Kara was 12. Her father had been a warrior of great renown, and his disappointment in her actions had been the worst part of her exile. In return, Ivan told her about his own childhood on a small farm much like this one, about losing his parents to a winter fever, about joining the army because he had nowhere else to go. He spoke carefully about the war, leaving out the worst parts, but she seemed to understand what he did not say. He told her about the friends he had lost, about the reasons he had taken his land grant so far from the frontier, about the 5 years he had spent building something peaceful. You ever regret it? Kara asked one evening as Ivan was helping her sit up to eat. Leaving the army. Living alone out here, sometimes, Ivan admitted. It is quiet, sometimes too quiet. But after all those years of noise and chaos and death, quiet seemed like a blessing. He handed her a bowl of stew. What about you? Do you regret what you did, saving that family? She considered the question, chewing slowly. No, she said finally. I regret what I lost because of it, my family, my place in the clan, my future. But the choice itself. No, those children deserve to live. I could not be the one to take that from them. She looked at him. Does that make sense? More than you know. As the second week began, Kara started to show more movement. She could sit up on her own, could use her arms to shift position in the bed. The shoulder wound had closed nicely, leaving what would be an impressive scar but no lasting damage. The leg was still immobile in its splint, but she reported less pain. Ivan took these as good signs. He also became aware of something else, something he tried very hard not to acknowledge. He was becoming accustomed to her presence. The farmhouse no longer felt empty with her in it. He found himself looking forward to their evening conversations, to the sound of her voice, to the way she laughed at his dry observations about farm life. She had a sharp wit and a sharper mind, and talking with her was engaging in a way he had not experienced in years. And she was beautiful. Ivan tried not to notice this, tried to see her only as a patient, someone in his care, someone who needed his help, but it was becoming impossible to ignore. The green of her skin was not monstrous but striking, like new leaves in spring. Her amber eyes caught the light in fascinating ways. Even bedridden and healing, there was a grace to the way she moved, a strength that spoke to the warrior she had been trained to be. He told himself it was just proximity, just the natural result of spending so much time with the only other person for miles. It did not mean anything. Could not mean anything. She was an orc. He was human. That divide was unbridgeable, and even if it was not, she would be leaving as soon as she was healed. There was no future in whatever he was feeling, but knowing that did not stop him from feeling it. Kara, for her part, seemed unaware of his internal struggle. She was focused on healing, on regaining her strength. She asked him to bring her things to do with her hands mending that needed attention, vegetables to peel for dinner. She hated being idle, she said, and Ivan understood that. They were alike in that way, both uncomfortable with stillness. One afternoon in the third week, Ivan was outside digging up potatoes when Rex started barking again, this time with the warning tone that meant strangers. Ivan straightened, wiping dirt from his hands, and saw a horse and rider coming up the long road to his farm. He recognized the horse first, a gray mare that belonged to Thomas Carmichael, who owned the neighboring property 3 miles east. Thomas was a good man, steady and fair, and he had been one of the few people to welcome Ivan when he had first settled here. They helped each other during harvest time, shared equipment, occasionally shared a drink. But having Thomas arrive now, with Kara hidden in his house, made Ivan's stomach clench with anxiety. He walked out to meet Thomas before the man could get too close to the house. Rex trotted at his heels, still alert but no longer barking. "Thomas," Ivan called out in greeting. "What brings you out this way?" Thomas dismounted, tying his mare to the fence post. He was a stocky man in his 50s, weathered by years of farm work, with a gray beard and kind eyes. "Checking on my neighbors," he said. "Have not seen you in town for a few weeks. Wanted to make sure you were not dead in a ditch somewhere." Ivan forced a laugh. "Very much alive, as you can see, just been busy with the harvest preparations." "Fair enough." Thomas looked around the farm with an appraising eye. "Place looks good. Corn did well this year." "Well enough. Should have a decent yield." They talked about farm matters for a while, the safe and comfortable conversation of men who shared similar concerns. But Ivan could feel the tension in his shoulders, the hyper-awareness of the house behind him. If Thomas asked to come inside, if he wanted to sit and have a drink, what would Ivan say? How could he refuse without arousing suspicion? "There is another reason I came by," Thomas said after a pause, and his expression grew serious. "There has been talk in town. Travelers passing through with news from the north. They say there is an orc war party moving through the area. Small group, maybe 5 or 6 warriors, hunting for someone. They have been asking questions in the border settlements, showing signs of aggression." Ivan's blood went cold. "An orc war party this far south. That is unusual." "Very unusual," Thomas agreed. "The militia is on alert. We are organizing patrols just in case. Wanted to give you warning, let you know to keep your eyes open. You are pretty isolated out here." He paused, then added, "You still have your service sword?" "Yes, in a trunk in the bedroom," Ivan said. "Have not touched it in years. Might want to oil it, just in case." Thomas clapped him on the shoulder. "Not trying to worry you, just want you prepared. These are strange times." "I appreciate the warning," Ivan said, walking Thomas back to his horse. "I will be careful." After Thomas rode away, Ivan stood in the yard for a long time, watching the dust settle on the road. An orc war party, hunting for someone. It did not take a genius to figure out who they were looking for. He returned to the house to find Kara awake and alert, her expression tense. "I heard," she said before he could speak. "They have tracked me here. We do not know that for certain. Do not insult my intelligence, Ivan." "Of course they tracked me. The clan does not give up on its sentences. They will search until they find me." She tried to push herself up. "I have to leave. Now, if they find me here, they will kill you for harboring me." "You cannot walk," Ivan said flatly, "and you are not leaving." "You do not understand. I understand perfectly. There is a war party hunting you. They will kill you if they find you." He crossed to the bed, looking down at her. "So we will make sure they do not find you." "How? You are one man, one human man. Against trained orc warriors, you have no chance." "Maybe not. But this is my land, and I know every inch of it. If they come here, we will have advantages they do not expect." He was already thinking, planning, old combat instincts rising to the surface. "Can you identify them? If you saw them, would you know if they were from your clan?" "Yes." "But Ivan, then we will see them before they see us. I have a vantage point on the North Hill where I can watch the road. If I spot them, I will have time to prepare." "Prepare how? You are talking about fighting my people. These are warriors, killers." Ivan met her eyes. "So was I." Over the next 2 days, Ivan prepared. He dug his old service sword from the trunk where it had sat gathering dust for 5 years, cleaned and oiled it until the blade gleamed. The weight of it in his hand was familiar in a way that made his chest tight with memories he had tried to leave behind. He checked the bow he used for hunting, made sure his arrows were straight and sharp. He moved supplies into the root cellar: water, food, blankets. If things went badly, Kara could hide down there. He also set up a rotation of watches from the North Hill, bringing a spyglass he used for checking on distant fields. From that vantage point, he could see for miles in every direction. If anyone approached, he would know. Kara argued with him constantly. She told him he was being foolish, that he should turn her over to the war party and save himself. She told him one human could not stand against trained orc warriors. She told him she was not worth dying for. Ivan ignored all of it. "Why are you doing this?" she demanded on the evening of the 2nd day, her frustration boiling over. "I am nothing to you, just an orc you found in a ditch. Why would you risk your life for me?" Ivan, who had been sharpening his sword by the fireplace, set down the whetstone and looked at her. In the firelight, her green skin seemed to glow, and her amber eyes reflected the flames. She was sitting up in bed, her healing body still weak but her spirit as fierce as ever. "Because it is the right thing to do," he said simply. "That is not an answer. It is the only answer I have." She stared at him, something shifting in her expression. "You are the strangest human I have ever met, Ivan Jennings. So you have said. I mean it. Most humans would have killed me on sight or left me to die. Instead, you brought me into your home, cared for me, and now you are preparing to fight your own kind to protect me." She shook her head. "I do not understand you." Ivan stood, crossing to the bed. He sat down on the edge, careful not to jostle her leg. "In the war," he said slowly, "I did things I am not proud of, followed orders that seemed right at the time but haunt me now. I killed orcs, yes, but I also killed the idea that all orcs were monsters, saw too much that did not fit that neat story." He looked at her. "When I found you, I saw a chance to do something right, something that mattered. Maybe that is selfish in its own way, but I could not walk away from you then, and I cannot walk away from you now." Kara reached out, her hand covering his where it rested on the bed. Her skin was warm, her grip strong despite her injuries. "If we survive this," she said softly, "remind me to thank you properly." Ivan felt his heart beat faster at her touch, at the way she was looking at him. "If we survive this, you can thank me by healing completely and deciding what you want to do with the rest of your life. Maybe I have already decided." "Oh," she smiled, small and secret. "Maybe I want to stay here, on this strange human farm with this strange human farmer." Ivan opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, Rex started barking outside, not the warning bark, the alarm bark. The one that meant danger was close. Ivan was on his feet instantly, sword in hand. "Stay here," he said to Kara. "If I do not come back, use the trapdoor to the cellar. Hide until you are sure they are gone." Ivan, but he was already moving, slipping out the door into the night. The moon was half full, providing some light but also creating shadows. Rex was at the edge of the yard, facing toward the north road, every line of his body tense. Ivan moved to stand beside him, his eyes scanning the darkness for a moment. There was nothing. Then he saw them, 5 figures, moving along the road toward his farm. Even at a distance, even in the moonlight, he could tell they were orcs. They moved with a distinctive gait, powerful and purposeful. They were armed, he could see the silhouettes of weapons, and they were coming directly toward his house. Ivan's mind raced. He could not fight 5 warriors and win. Even in his prime, even with the element of surprise, the odds were impossible. But maybe he did not have to fight them all. Maybe he just had to convince them that Kara was not here, that they should move on. He stepped out into the middle of the yard, making himself visible. Raised his voice to carry in the night. "That is far enough. This is private land. State your business." The figures stopped. For a moment there was silence. Then one of them, larger than the others, stepped forward. "We are hunting a traitor to our clan," the orc called back in heavily accented human tongue. "A female. Green skin, dark hair, amber eyes. We tracked her to this area. Have you seen her?" "No," Ivan said, putting every ounce of conviction he could into the lie. "I have seen no orcs here." "You are the first in months." The large orc stepped closer, close enough now that Ivan could make out details. He was massive, easily 6.5 feet tall, with arms like tree trunks and a face marked with ritual scars. His tusks were prominent, his eyes dark and hard. "You are certain?" "We have reason to believe she came this way." "I am certain. As I said, I have seen no one." The orc studied him for a long moment. Then, deliberately, he drew the large blade strapped to his back. The other warriors did the same, forming a loose semicircle. "Human," the leader said, "we are not interested in you. Give us the traitor and we will leave in peace. Refuse and we will tear this farm apart looking for her, And if we find you have lied to us, we will tear you apart as well." Ivan raised his sword. His hands were steady, his breathing calm. Old training settling over him like a familiar cloak. "There is no one here but me and my dog. You can search if you insist, but you will find nothing. Then you will not mind if we look." "I mind very much, but I suppose I cannot stop all 5 of you." Ivan shifted his stance slightly, weight on the balls of his feet. "Fair warning, though. I was a soldier on the northern frontier for 10 years. I have fought orcs before. I will not go down easy." The leader laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "1 human against 5 orc warriors. You are either very brave or very stupid." "Been told I am both." The attack came suddenly. 2 of the warriors rushed him from different sides, a coordinated assault meant to overwhelm him quickly. Ivan moved on pure instinct, dodging left and bringing his sword up to parry the first strike. Metal rang against metal. He spun, using momentum to deliver a cut toward the second attacker, forcing them back. But the third warrior was already moving in, and Ivan had to give ground, backing toward the house. They were good, well-trained and experienced, but so was he, and this was his land. He knew every stone, every dip in the earth. When one warrior lunged forward, Ivan sidestepped and let the orc stumble over a rut in the yard that he knew was there. He opened a shallow cut on the warrior's arm, drawing first blood, but he was tiring already, and they had barely started. 5 against 1 were impossible odds. He blocked another strike, countered with one of his own, but a blade got through his defense and opened a cut on his shoulder. Pain flared, hot and bright. "Stop!" The voice cut through the night like a knife, and everyone froze. Ivan looked toward the house to see Kara standing in the doorway, leaning heavily on a makeshift crutch she must have fashioned from a chair leg. She was pale, clearly in pain, but her chin was raised defiantly. "Enough," she said. "I am the one you are hunting. Here I am." The leader of the war party turned toward her, his expression shifting to something like satisfaction. "Kara, so the human was lying." "He was protecting me," Kara said, hobbling forward. "As is his right. This is his land. I am his guest." "Guest?" The leader spat the word. "You are a traitor to the clan. You have no right to claim guest rights, and this human has no right to harbor you." "Then your dispute is with me, not with him. Let Ivan go. I will come with you willingly." "No," Ivan said sharply. "Kara, get back inside." "Ivan, no." He stepped between Kara and the war party, his sword still raised. "I did not spend 3 weeks keeping her alive just to let you kill her now." The leader's expression darkened. "You are making a mistake, human. This does not concern you. She is on my land, in my home." "That makes it very much my concern." For a moment, Ivan thought the orc was going to attack again. But then Kara spoke, her voice ringing with authority Ivan had not heard from her before. "Vorak, you know me. You trained with my father. You know I am not a traitor, not in any way that matters. I spared a human family because it was the right thing to do, the same as my father would have done. The same as you would have done once, before the clan became so consumed with vengeance that we forgot our own honor." The leader, Vorak, hesitated. "The council has spoken. The sentence is death." "The council is wrong," Kara said. "And you know it. Killing me will not bring honor to the clan. It will only prove that we have become exactly what the humans believe we are, monsters without mercy or wisdom. You speak treason. I speak truth. And if you carry out this sentence, you will have to go through Ivan to do it. An innocent human who has shown me more kindness than my own people. Is that the honor of the Mountain Ash clan? Killing those who help the helpless?" Vorak stood very still, his warriors arrayed behind him. In the moonlight, his scarred face was unreadable. Then, slowly, he sheathed his sword. "You always did have your father's tongue, Kara, too clever for your own good." He looked at Ivan. Human, you have put yourself in a dangerous position for this woman. Why? Ivan did not lower his sword. Because she deserves to live, and because I have had enough of killing. Even if it means your own death. Yes. Vorak studied him for a long moment, then looked back at Kara. The council will not change its sentence. If we return without you, they will send others. They will not stop until you are dead. I know, Kara said quietly. But Vorak continued, and there was something almost gentle in his harsh voice. If we do not find you, we cannot kill you. And if you were to disappear into human lands, far from the territories we patrol, we might never find you at all. Kara's eyes widened. Vorak, we came here hunting a traitor, Vorak said, his voice flat and formal as if reciting for an audience. We found only a stubborn human farmer who claims to have seen no orcs. We searched his land and found nothing. The traitor has eluded us. We will report this to the council and continue our search elsewhere. Understanding dawned in Kara's expression. Thank you, she whispered. Vorak nodded once, sharp and formal, then he turned to his warriors. There is nothing here, we move on. To Ivan, he said, take care of her, human. She is worth more than the clan understands. Then to Kara, your father would be proud of the warrior you have become, do not forget that. And with that, the war party melted back into the night, moving south down the road until they vanished into shadow. Ivan stood frozen, sword still raised, scarcely able to believe what had just happened. Slowly he lowered the blade. Kara was crying. Silent tears streaked down her green face, catching the moonlight. Ivan moved to her side, steadying her as she swayed on her makeshift crutch. Come on, he said gently. Let us get you inside. He helped her back to the house, settling her on the bed. She was trembling, whether from emotion or exhaustion or pain, he could not tell. Probably all three. He fetched water, checked her bandages, made sure she had not torn anything in her mad dash to the doorway. You should not have done that, he said, his voice rough. You could have reopened your wounds, could have fallen. You were going to die for me, Kara said, looking up at him. I could not let that happen, and I could not let them take you. Why? She asked again, the same question she had asked so many times before. But now there was something different in her voice, in the way she looked at him. Ivan sat down on the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted. His shoulder throbbed where the blade had caught him. His hands were shaking with adrenaline. Because, he said slowly, in the past 3 weeks, you have become important to me. More important than I expected. More important than is probably wise. He met her amber eyes. Because when I think about you leaving, about you not being here, it feels wrong. And because when I saw them coming for you, I realized I would rather die than let them hurt you. Kara reached up, her hand cupping his cheek. Her palm was warm against his skin. You are a fool, Ivan Jennings. Been told that too. A wonderful, brave, incredible fool. She pulled him down, and then her lips were on his, and Ivan forgot about the war party, about the danger, about every reason this was a terrible idea. He kissed her back, gentle and careful of her injuries, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. When they finally broke apart, Kara was smiling, a real smile that lit up her entire face. I meant what I said earlier, she told him, about staying here if you will have me. Have you? Ivan laughed, the sound a little wild. Kara, there is nothing I want more, but are you certain? You will be giving up your people, your culture, everything you have ever known, and I am just a farmer, I cannot offer you much. You offer me kindness, safety, a home, and something I thought I had lost forever, a future. She threaded her fingers through his. That is everything, Ivan. That is more than I ever dared hope for. Then stay, he said. Stay as long as you like, stay forever if you want. Forever sounds good. They sat together in the quiet of the farmhouse, hands clasped, and for the first time since he had found her broken and bleeding in the ditch, Ivan allowed himself to believe that things might actually work out. The following weeks brought their own challenges. Kara's leg healed slowly, and she chafed at being confined to bed. Ivan brought her books from his small collection, taught her to read human script, which was different from orc runes. They played chess in the evenings, and she beat him more often than not, her strategic mind quick and sharp. She told him stories of the northern mountains, and he told her about the wider world he had seen during his military service. As she grew stronger, she began to help with small tasks. She could shell peas, mend clothing, prepare vegetables for cooking. She had a good hand with herbs and taught Ivan poultices and remedies she had learned from her clan's healers. The farmhouse felt more like a home with her in it, felt alive in a way it had not been when Ivan lived alone. They did not speak about the future in concrete terms, but it was there between them, unspoken but understood. She would stay. He would care for her. They would build something together. The first real test came 6 weeks after the war party's visit, when Kara was finally able to walk short distances with a crutch. Thomas Carmichael came by again, this time with his wife Martha, bringing preserves and news from town. Ivan's heart sank when he saw 2 riders approaching, but there was no avoiding it. He helped Kara into the root cellar before Thomas and Martha arrived, hating the necessity but knowing there was no other choice. "Ivan," Martha called out cheerfully as they dismounted. She was a plump, kind woman who had always been friendly to Ivan, though they did not see each other often. "I told Thomas we needed to bring you some of my apple butter. You look like you have been living on jerky and hardtack." "Not quite that bad," Ivan said, forcing a smile. "But I appreciate the thought." They visited for an hour, sitting in Ivan's kitchen, drinking tea and talking about harvest yields and weather predictions. Ivan was acutely aware of Kara below them, hidden in the dark cellar, and every minute felt like an hour. He tried to act natural, to be a good host, but he could feel the tension in his shoulders. Finally, they left, and Ivan waited until they were well down the road before opening the trapdoor. Kara climbed out with his help, her expression troubled. "This is not sustainable," she said. "If you have to hide me every time someone visits, it will raise suspicions eventually." "I know," Ivan admitted, "but I do not know what else to do. If people find out I am harboring an orc, I know. They will turn on you." Kara limped to the table, sitting down heavily. "Maybe I should build a shelter in the woods, somewhere I can stay when visitors come." "No," Ivan said sharply. "You are still healing. You cannot live rough, not yet." "Then what do you suggest?" It was a good question, and Ivan did not have a good answer. They let it rest for the moment, but the problem lingered in the back of his mind. The answer came from an unexpected source. A week later, Ivan was in town buying supplies when he ran into Father Michael, the elderly priest who oversaw the small church in Millfield. Father Michael was a gentle, thoughtful man who had always treated Ivan with kindness, even though Ivan rarely attended services. "Ivan," the priest said warmly, "good to see you. How is the farm?" "Good, Father, preparing for winter." "Always a busy time." Father Michael paused, then said, "I have been meaning to ask you something. There have been rumors in town, talk of an orc woman seen in the area, possibly injured. Some of the young men are talking about forming a hunting party." His eyes were kind but searching. "You have not seen anything unusual, have you?" Ivan's heart hammered, but he kept his expression neutral. "No, Father, nothing unusual." The priest studied him for a long moment. Then he said very quietly, "If you were to see such a person, and if that person were in need of help, I hope you would remember the scripture. I was a stranger and you took me in. I was sick and you visited me. The Lord does not differentiate between human and orc when it comes to mercy." Ivan stared at him, and the priest smiled gently. "Just something to think about. Good day, Ivan. May the Lord bless your harvest." He walked away, leaving Ivan standing in the middle of the street, stunned. Father Michael knew, or at least suspected, and he was telling Ivan that he approved. That evening, Ivan told Kara about the conversation. She listened quietly, her expression thoughtful. "Your priest sounds like a wise man," she said. "He is. And I think he was telling me that not everyone in town will react with violence if they learn about you." Ivan took her hand. "Maybe we do not have to hide forever. Maybe there is a way to make this work. Or maybe people will want to drive me out, or worse." "Maybe," Ivan agreed. "But we will not know unless we try. And I am tired of hiding you like you are something to be ashamed of. You are not. You are brave and strong, and you saved a family you did not know at the cost of everything you had. If people cannot see that, then they are blind." Kara smiled, squeezing his hand. "When did you become such an optimist? I think you are a bad influence." As autumn deepened into winter, they began to make small, careful steps toward bringing Kara out of hiding. It started with Thomas and Martha. Ivan invited them for dinner, and before they arrived, he told Kara, "No more hiding. If we are going to make this work, we need allies. And I trust Thomas and Martha." Kara was nervous. Ivan could tell, though she hid it well. She wore one of Ivan's old shirts and a pair of trousers he had altered to fit her. Her leg was much stronger now, though she still walked with a slight limp. When Thomas and Martha arrived, Ivan met them at the door. "Before you come in," he said, "I need to tell you something. I have a guest. Someone who has been staying with me while recovering from injuries. Someone I hope you will treat with kindness." Thomas frowned, confused. "Of course, Ivan." "Who she is an orc," Ivan said bluntly. "Her name is Kara. She was cast out by her clan for showing mercy to a human family. I found her dying in my ditch and I took her in. She has been here for 3 months healing, and I care about her." He met Thomas's eyes. "If you cannot accept that, I understand, but I will not apologize for helping her." Thomas and Martha exchanged a long look. Then Martha said, "May we meet her?" Ivan stepped aside and they entered. Kara was standing by the fireplace, her posture straight and proud despite the obvious tension in her shoulders. She was tall and green-skinned and unmistakably orc, and for a moment the silence in the room was deafening. Then Martha walked forward and extended her hand. "Hello, Kara." "I am Martha. This is my husband Thomas. Any friend of Ivan's is welcome in our home." Kara stared at the offered hand, then slowly reached out and shook it. Her voice was rough with emotion when she spoke. "Thank you, Martha. That means more than you know." The evening was awkward at first, everyone walking on eggshells, but gradually the conversation began to flow. Thomas asked Kara about orc culture. Martha wanted to know about her healing. Kara answered carefully, but as the night went on, she relaxed. By the time Thomas and Martha left, they were all smiling. "That went better than I expected," Kara said after they had gone. "Told you. Not everyone is blind. Word spread as word does in small communities." Ivan made no attempt to hide Kara anymore. When he went to town, he took her with him, her hand in his. Some people stared. Some whispered. But Father Michael greeted her warmly in the street, and Martha made a point of introducing her to other women at the market. Slowly, cautiously, some of the townsfolk began to accept her presence. Not everyone, of course. There were those who muttered about betrayal, about harboring monsters. A few men made threats, though none ever followed through when they saw Ivan's hand on his sword. But the outright hostility Ivan had feared never materialized. People were wary, but willing to watch and wait. Winter came in earnest, blanketing the farm in snow. Ivan and Kara settled into a comfortable domesticity that felt both natural and miraculous. They cooked together, worked together, spent long evenings by the fire talking and reading and simply being. Kara proved to have a talent for woodworking, and she spent hours carving small figures, animals, people, intricate patterns. Ivan gave her the tools and materials she needed and marveled at what she created. One night, as snow fell softly outside and the fire crackled in the hearth, Ivan looked across the room at Kara. She was bent over a piece of wood, her tongue caught between her teeth in concentration, her amber eyes bright in the firelight. His chest felt full, almost painfully so, with everything he felt for her. "Kara," he said softly. She looked up, smiling. "Yes, marry me." Her hands stilled on the wood. "What?" Ivan crossed the room, kneeling beside her chair. He took her hands in his, feeling the calluses from her work, the strength in her fingers. "Marry me," he said again. "I know it will not be easy, I know there will be people who disapprove, but I do not care. I love you, Kara. I want you to be my wife. I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Tears welled in her amber eyes, spilling over. "Ivan, you cannot," she stopped, shook her head. "Do you know what you are asking? A human marrying an orc, it is forbidden. Taboo." "I do not care about taboos, I care about you. Your people will shun you, some might. Others will understand, and those who matter already accept you." He squeezed her hands. "I am not asking permission from the world, Kara. I am asking you, will you marry me?" She was crying in earnest now, but she was also smiling, and when she spoke her voice was fierce with joy. "Yes, yes, you foolish, wonderful man. I will marry you." Ivan pulled her down from the chair and kissed her, deep and tender and full of promise. When they broke apart, Kara was laughing through her tears. "How will we even do this? What priest would perform the ceremony? I have an idea about that." The next morning, Ivan rode into town alone and went straight to the church. Father Michael was in the sanctuary arranging candles, and he looked up with a smile when Ivan entered. "Ivan, what brings you here?" "I want to marry Kara," Ivan said without preamble, "and I am hoping you will perform the ceremony." Father Michael set down the candle he was holding. "You are certain about this?" "More certain than I have been about anything in my life." The priest was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "You know this will cause controversy. There will be those in the congregation who object strongly." "I know. And you are prepared for that?" "Yes." Father Michael smiled, the expression warm and approving. "Then I will do it." "When?" "As soon as possible." The wedding was held 2 weeks later in the small church in Millfield. It was a modest affair. Thomas and Martha attended, along with Father Michael and a handful of other townsfolk who had come to respect Kara over the winter. Some came out of curiosity. A few came to object, but Father Michael's stern gaze from the pulpit silenced them. Kara wore a simple dress that Martha had helped her make, dyed a deep forest green. Ivan wore his best clothes, which were still just farm clothes, but clean and mended. They stood before the altar, hands clasped, and spoke the vows that would bind them together. "Do you, Ivan, take this woman to be your wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do," Ivan said, his voice steady and sure. "And do you, Kara, take this man to be your husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do," Kara said, her amber eyes shining. "Then by the authority vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Ivan did, and the small congregation applauded. It was done. They were married, human and orc, bound together before God and witnesses. When they walked out of the church into the winter sunlight, hand in hand, Ivan felt lighter than he had in years. The years that followed were not always easy. There were people who never accepted their marriage, who muttered and whispered and occasionally made their disapproval known. But there were more who came to see Kara as a member of the community. She had a gift for healing, and people began to come to the farm seeking her help with illnesses and injuries. She taught the local healer about orc remedies, shared her knowledge freely. Ivan's farm prospered. With Kara's help, he expanded his fields, planted an orchard, raised livestock. They built a larger house together, room by room, a home that reflected both of them. Kara carved beautiful designs into the wooden beams, and Ivan made sure there was a large hearth for cooking and warmth. 3 years after their wedding, Kara gave birth to their first child, a daughter with green-tinged skin and her mother's amber eyes but her father's nose. They named her Alara. 2 years later, a son followed, whom they named Marcus. Both children were healthy and strong, and watching them grow filled Ivan with a joy he had not known was possible. The children changed things in the community. People who had been wary of Kara found it harder to maintain that wariness when they saw her cradling a baby or teaching her daughter to walk. The children played with the other children in town, and slowly, naturally, the barriers began to break down. One summer afternoon, nearly 7 years after Ivan had found Kara in the ditch, they sat together on the porch of their home. Alara and Marcus were playing in the yard, chasing Rex's successor, a young dog named Scout. The fields were golden with wheat ready for harvest. The sky was clear and blue. "You ever regret it?" Ivan asked, the question he had asked before years ago. "Everything you gave up," Kara leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. "Never," she said. "I lost my clan, my old life, everything I thought defined me, but I gained so much more. A home, a family, love." She looked up at him. "You saved my life, Ivan, in more ways than one." "You saved mine too," Ivan said quietly. "I was just existing before you, now I am living." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children play, listening to the sounds of their farm. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked, but this time it was just Rex chasing rabbits, nothing more. The dangers had passed. The struggles had been overcome. What remained was this: a quiet afternoon, a family together, and a love that had overcome every obstacle placed in its path. It was not the life Ivan had imagined when he left the military, and it was not the life Kara had imagined when she was cast out by her clan. But it was theirs, built together from nothing, and it was more precious than gold. "I love you," Kara said softly. "I love you too," Ivan replied. And that, in the end, was all that mattered. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Ivan called the children in for dinner. Alara came running, her dark hair flying behind her, while Marcus toddled after his sister on unsteady legs. Kara scooped him up, laughing as he grabbed at her tusks, a gesture he had loved since he was tiny. Inside, the house was warm and welcoming. Ivan stirred the stew bubbling over the fire while Kara set the table, the children helping in their own enthusiastic way. They ate together, a family, sharing the simple meal and the stories of their day. Alara told them about the bird's nest she had found in the barn. Marcus babbled about the flowers he had picked, most of which he had probably eaten. After dinner, Kara took the children to bed while Ivan cleaned up. He could hear her voice from the bedroom, telling them a story about the northern mountains where she had grown up. The children loved those stories, loved learning about their mother's heritage. Ivan had taught them that they were special, that they carried the best of two peoples within them, and they should be proud of that. When Kara emerged from the bedroom, she found Ivan standing at the window, looking out at the night. She wrapped her arms around him from behind, resting her cheek against his back. "What are you thinking about? How lucky I am," Ivan said. "That Rex barked that day, that I went to investigate, that I made the choice to help you instead of walking away." "Luck had nothing to do with it," Kara said. You are a good man, Ivan Jennings. You would have helped anyone in that ditch. Maybe, but I am glad it was you. They stood together in the quiet house, listening to the sounds of their children sleeping, the crackle of the dying fire, the wind in the trees outside. It was a peace that Ivan had fought for, that Kara had sacrificed for, that they had built together brick by brick, day by day. Years continued to pass in that same gentle rhythm. The farm grew more prosperous. Alara grew into a smart, confident girl who had her mother's strategic mind and her father's steady temperament. Marcus was quieter but had a gift with animals that amazed everyone who saw it. The children were accepted in the community, though they sometimes faced questions or comments about their heritage. Ivan and Kara taught them to stand proud, to answer with grace and confidence. Thomas and Martha became like family, visiting often and treating Alara and Marcus like grandchildren. Father Michael baptized both children and continued to be a steady presence and advocate in the community. Slowly, other mixed families began to emerge in the area, not many, but enough that Ivan and Kara's children were not the only ones of their kind. The world was changing, slowly but surely. The old hatreds were not gone, but they were fading, worn down by the undeniable reality of people like Ivan and Kara who had chosen love over fear. One evening, when Alara was 12 and Marcus was 10, a visitor arrived at the farm. Ivan was in the barn when Rex started barking an alert bark, not a warning, and he emerged to see a lone orc standing at the edge of the property. For a moment, his hand went to the knife at his belt, old instincts rising. But then Kara was running past him, and he heard her cry out in joy. Vorak. The massive orc warrior who had once led a hunting party to Ivan's farm stood waiting, older now, his scars more pronounced, but his eyes were kind. Kara embraced him, and Vorak returned it, his huge arms gentle around her. "Little sister," Vorak said in Orcish, which Ivan had learned over the years, "it is good to see you well." "What are you doing here?" Kara asked, pulling back to look at him. "Bringing news," Vorak said, "and a message. The clan chief has died. His son has taken leadership." "There have been many changes in the clan, Kara, many questions about the old ways." He looked at Ivan, acknowledging him with a nod. "The new chief has lifted your sentence. You are no longer exiled. You may return if you wish." Kara stood very still. "Return if you wish," Vorak repeated. "Your father is old now. He would like to see you again before he passes, to meet his grandchildren." He glanced toward the house, where Alara and Marcus had emerged, watching with wide eyes. "You have built a good life here. No one expects you to give that up. But you should know that you have a choice now. You are free." Ivan felt his heart clench. He had known this day might come, had known that someday Kara might have the option to return to her people. He had told himself he would support her decision, whatever it was. But the thought of losing her, of losing this life they had built, was almost unbearable. Kara turned to look at him, and Ivan saw his own feelings reflected in her amber eyes. She took his hand, squeezing tight. Then she turned back to Vorak. "Tell my father I love him," she said quietly. "Tell him I am grateful for the lifting of the sentence, and tell him that I would like to visit to introduce him to his grandchildren and my husband. But my home is here now. My life is here. I am not leaving." Vorak smiled, the expression transforming his scarred face. "I thought you would say that. Your father will understand. He always did think you had your mother's stubborn streak." He knelt down, looking at Alara and Marcus. "You must be the children I have heard whispers of, children of two worlds. You are unique, little ones. Be proud of that." "We are," Alara said confidently, and Vorak laughed. "Good." He stood, clasping Kara's shoulder once more. "I will return in the spring to escort you north for a visit if you wish. Your family would like to meet them." I would like that, Kara said. Vorak nodded to Ivan. You take good care of her, human, better than her own people did. I will, Ivan said. Always. After Vorak left, Kara and Ivan stood together in the yard watching the sunset. Are you sure, Ivan asked quietly, about not returning? Kara looked at him as if he had said something ridiculous. Of course I am sure. My life is here, Ivan, with you, with our children. This is my home. It has been my home since the day you pulled me out of that ditch. She cupped his face in her hands. You are my home, do you understand that? Yes, Ivan said, his voice rough with emotion. I do. That spring, they made the journey north with Vorak as their guide. It was Ivan's first time in Orc territory, and he was nervous, but Kara's presence at his side gave him courage. They were welcomed by her father, a grizzled old warrior who wept openly when he saw his daughter and grandchildren. The visit was awkward at times. Cultural differences were stark, and there were members of the clan who clearly disapproved of Kara's choices. But there were also those who were curious, who asked questions, who looked at Alara and Marcus with wonder rather than disdain. They stayed for 2 weeks, and when they left, it was with promises to visit again. Kara's father gave each of the children a gift: a carved knife for Marcus, a bow for Alara. Remember where you come from, he told them. Both sides, you are stronger for it. The journey home felt like a completion of something, a final piece falling into place. Kara had made peace with her past. She had her father's blessing and the option to maintain connections with her clan. But more importantly, she had chosen Ivan and the life they had built, and that choice, freely made, meant everything. More years passed. Alara grew into a young woman who was fierce and kind in equal measure. She chose to become a healer like her mother, learning everything Kara could teach her, and then seeking out teachers in both human and orc communities. Marcus discovered he had a gift for diplomacy, for bridging the gaps between species, and he began traveling to settlements on the border, working to build understanding and peace. Ivan and Kara grew older together, their hair graying, their bodies slowing, but their love only deepening with time. They had faced everything the world could throw at them: prejudice, danger, exile, fear, and they had overcome it all. They had built not just a life but a legacy, children who would carry their example forward into a changing world. One autumn evening, 20 years after Ivan had first heard Rex barking at the ditch, he sat on the porch with Kara, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. Their grandchildren, Alara's children, played in the yard. The farm was prosperous, the community was peaceful, and Ivan felt a contentment so deep it was almost painful. You remember the day I found you? Ivan asked. Kara laughed, the sound rich and warm. How could I forget? I was half dead, lying in a ditch, and you looked at me like you could not decide whether to run away or help. I almost did run, but you did not. You saved me, and in doing so, you saved yourself. Maybe we saved each other, maybe we did. They sat in comfortable silence, hands clasped, watching their grandchildren play. The world had changed so much since that day. Orcs and humans were not at peace everywhere, but there were more bridges than there had been, more examples of what was possible when people chose understanding over fear. And it all started with a dog barking at a ditch, a farmer making a choice, and 2 people who refused to let the world tell them their love was impossible. I would do it all again, Ivan said softly. Every moment, every choice, I would do it all again to end up right here. Kara squeezed his hand. So would I, my love, so would I. The sun set, painting the world in gold and crimson, and Ivan and Kara sat together on the porch of the home they had built, surrounded by the family they had created, at peace with the life they had chosen. It was not the life either of them had expected, but it was the life they had fought for, sacrificed for, and built together. And it was perfect. As darkness fell and stars began to appear in the vast sky above, Ivan helped Kara to her feet, and they walked inside together. The house was warm and welcoming, filled with the sounds and smells of home. Their grandchildren would stay the night, as they often did, and in the morning there would be breakfast to make, chores to do, and another day to be lived. But for now, there was this moment, this quiet, perfect moment of peace and completion. Ivan pulled Kara close, kissing her forehead, and she leaned into him with the comfortable familiarity of decades together. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For everything. For pulling me out of that ditch. For seeing past what I was to who I was. For loving me when the world said you should not. For giving me a life worth living." "You gave me the same," Ivan said, "and I will spend every day I have left being grateful for it." They stood together in their home, surrounded by evidence of the life they had built, the children's drawings on the walls, the carved beams Kara had made, the furniture Ivan had crafted. Every object told a story, every corner held a memory. It was a life measured not in gold or glory, but in small, precious moments accumulated over time. Outside, Scout barked once, chasing something in the darkness. Ivan smiled, remembering another dog, another bark, another time when everything changed. Some might call it fate. Others might call it chance. Ivan just called it the best day of his life, the day his dog barked at the ditch, the day he found Kara, the day his real life began. And now, 20 years later, he could look back on all of it, the fear and the courage, the struggle and the triumph, the pain and the joy, and know that every moment had been worth it. Every choice had led him here, to this perfect evening with the woman he loved and the family they had created. The story that had begun in a ditch with a dying orc woman and a conflicted human farmer had become a legend in the community, passed down to children as an example of what was possible when people chose love over hate. Ivan and Kara had not set out to change the world. They had only wanted to build a life together. But in doing so, they had shown others what was possible, had proven that the divides between peoples were not as insurmountable as everyone believed. As they settled in for the night, their grandchildren asleep in the guest room, Ivan looked at Kara one more time. Even after all these years, she still took his breath away. The green of her skin was as beautiful to him as it had been that first day. Her amber eyes still lit up when she smiled. She was still the strongest, bravest person he had ever known. "I love you," he said, the words as true now as they had been the first time he said them. "I love you too," Kara replied, settling into bed beside him. "Always and forever." They fell asleep in each other's arms as they had every night for 20 years, and their dreams were peaceful. Outside, the farm slept under a blanket of stars, the fields ready for harvest, the animals safe in their pens, the house warm and secure. It was the home that love had built, brick by brick, moment by moment, choice by choice. And it would stand long after Ivan and Kara were gone, a testament to what was possible when two people decided that love was worth fighting for, no matter the cost. The end of their story was not an ending at all, but a continuation carried forward in their children, their grandchildren, and every person who heard their tale and dared to believe that maybe, just maybe, the impossible was possible after all. In the morning, Ivan woke early as farmers do, and he lay for a moment watching Kara sleep, her face peaceful in the dawn light. 20 years, he thought. 20 years since that fateful day. And if he could go back, knowing everything that would come, the struggles, the prejudice, the challenges, he would make the same choice in a heartbeat, because love, real love, was always worth it. Always. Kara's eyes opened and she smiled at him, and Ivan smiled back. Another day was beginning, full of work and routine and the small joys of life. But it was their day, their life, and that made all the difference. "Good morning, husband," Kara said. "Good morning, wife," Ivan replied. And together, hand in hand, they rose to meet another beautiful day on the farm where a dog had once barked, where a man had once made a choice, and where love had proven stronger than every obstacle in its path. This was their happily ever after, hard-won and precious, built on a foundation of courage, sacrifice, and an unwavering belief in each other. It was everything they had fought for, everything they had dreamed of, and more. And as the sun rose over the fields, painting the world in gold, Ivan and Kara stood together on their porch, watching their grandchildren wake and begin to play. And they knew with absolute certainty that they had made the right choice all those years ago. The world was better because they had chosen love. Their children and grandchildren would carry that lesson forward. And somewhere in another ditch, on another farm, another story might be beginning, another chance for love to triumph over fear, for understanding to bridge divides, for two people from different worlds to choose each other and build something beautiful. But that was a story for another day. This story, Ivan and Kara's story, had reached its perfect conclusion. They had lived, they had loved, they had overcome, and they had won. Not through violence or force, but through simple, stubborn, persistent love. And in the end, that was the only victory that mattered. Word count: 17,000.